Gauteng Department of Health has recorded more than 23,000 teenage pregnancies between April 2020 and March 2021. More than 900 of the girls were between the ages of 10 and 14. This raises more questions about teenage pregnancies in South Africa. To get a reaction on this worrying story, we're joined by the General Secretary of the National Association of School Governing Bodies, Matakanye Matakanye, as well as Reverend Chris Mathebula, who's the lead pastor of Hope Restoration Ministries. And on the line, we have a parent from Soweto, Phineas Mothibi. Good evening to you all, and thank you so much for your time this evening. I'll begin with you, Matakanye. What was your reaction when you then heard of these worrying numbers?
Thank you very much, Bongiwe, as well as all your listeners. It is really shocking and also disturbing. However, it did not came as a surprise, because there is a phrase that goes, an idle mind is a devil's workshop. You will remember, Bongiwe, that the advent of this pandemic, 2020,
all right, it looks like that line to Matakanye. Oh, okay, you are back to that.
Nearly destroyed the system of education in this country.
All right, while we try to get Ntate Matakanye back, I'm going to ask you, Ntate, just for them to, for the control room to check your line so that we can be able to have a better conversation with you. Reverend Mathebula, I'd like to bring you into this conversation. This is the statistics. Others have said these numbers are no longer shocking because nothing is being done to address the issue of teenage pregnancy, while others are saying we should not be desensitized and really continue to lament the numbers that we are seeing. 23,000, over 23,000. This is not a small number.
Well, Bongi, this is heartbreaking. You know, I'm a parent. I'm raising girls as well. You know, as Ntate Matakanye said, you know, and when people are not active, an idle mind will always become a devil's workshop. But my say over the years has been, everything rises and falls on leadership. You know, it's another failure. Unfortunately, I have to be blunt and be straight in these matters. When you don't have leadership in the country, here I'm not only referring only on the government, to the government. I'm referring to parents. I'm referring to the school, you know, as well, and even the leaders in the community. These are the results of a leadership that has failed big time in our country. When the pandemic came in, it was just the final nail on the problems that we are having in this country. It is time for us as South Africans to take our rightful position and begin to confront this. This is a problem. We have failed our children in this country, and we really have to do something about it.
Ntate Mothibi, have you as parents, at the back of what Reverend Mathebula is saying, have you as parents failed your children?
Hello, good day.
Good afternoon, Ntate Mothibi. I'm not sure if you were able to hear Ntate Mathebula that as parents, this is a leadership crisis that not only reflects to the lack of leadership of government, but also the lack of leadership when it comes to parents as well. Have parents failed their children? And you're speaking as a parent tonight.
Yes, I hear you. Some of the conversation did cut off because of the network here. But the bottom line is, now that we are having a crisis, we need to come up with the better solution. How can we get out of the whole situation? Because the more we blame each other, the more things will get worse. I understand that there are problems with parental involvement at schools, which we have to, as parents, address. Our kids are not going to school moment because of the pandemic. Unfortunately, we don't have enough programs at school which can keep these kids busy to get their mind out of misbehaving, being bullying at school and all that. The more we drift, because I'm saying this, teachers are also parents. Everybody is a parent as long as we have a child. So let's join hands and see how can we assist our kids, being the future generations of our country, to get rid of the misbehaving and to give them the good guidance. If we have a challenge as parents to talk to them, at times we find you will not match because we are old school, some of the parents. We are not allowed to talk some other languages. But if we can get rid of that by involving other parts of the family, like aunties,
Ntate Mothibi, I'm going to ask the team to try and redial you in a moment because your line is now, unfortunately, it's preventing us from being able to hear what you are saying. Reverend Mathebula, let's continue then this conversation. When you look at the church, I know that as parents, the fingers are pointing at us, the fingers are pointing at the schools, the fingers are pointing at those in government. But what then becomes the position of a church when you are seeing statistics like this one, and the role then that can be played by the church to ensure that we don't see our young girls being subjected to this? Because when you read some of the stories, children were raped.
But Bongi, I just pray and hope that our government is watching. We cried from day one and say, when there's a pandemic, the biggest mistake they've done, it was also to close churches. And I always say to people, even to the government, a church is like a conscience of the nation. It's like when two teams are playing, Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs, you need a referee. The church is always there to play that role. And unfortunately, we have been muzzled as the church. You close the country, you close the church. People who are reminding or who are continuing to remind people about the morals in the nation. And we were muzzled, we were closed. And how can we begin to speak to our children if we are not operating? The biggest question now that we also need to ask while our churches have been closed is that who is counseling these children at the age of 10 who are pregnant, 11 pregnant? Who is counseling them at this present moment? These are the problems that we have. And we are saying it is very, very important for the government not just to, oppose laws without even listening unto us. I even heard Ntate speaking about the activities, the sports in the schools and all that. They have neglected many things. You concentrate on one pandemic, to drop down, the COVID. While you open doors in other areas, sports facilities are not functioning. Our children are roaming all around in the streets. Nobody's looking after them. This is a serious problem. That is why I said leadership in this country, it is a crisis. We can look at these children, but I strongly believe our government, parents as well, have failed these children, and we need to come up very strong and say enough is enough. We cannot continue to rule a nation in this matter. We are really compromising the future of our children and the next generations.
Reverend Mathebula and Ntate Mothibi, I'm going to ask us just to pause for a moment as we continue then with our conversation in just a moment, as we look then at whether or not are we really labeling what is going on in the correct manner and what becomes the solutions then going forward. Let's continue then with our conversation with the lead pastor of Hope Restoration Ministries, Reverend Chris Mathebula, as well as Ntate Phineas Mothibi, who's a parent. We are struggling with the National Association of School Governing Bodies General Secretary, Ntate Matakanye Matakanye. We're trying to reestablish a better line with him, and we'll have him back in this conversation in just a moment. Ntate Mothibi, when one of the things that we continue to see is that Banaba, when they've had a child, especially if it's a child, they not only are dealing with the fact that they now have given birth, But there's also another trauma that they then have to go through. Others may have been raped. They've got to deal with that as well, but also grow up with the stigma of having been a teenage mom, and at the same time, not much is being done about the boy that would have then impregnated this particular young girl. What does then the role of the parents need to be here? Because it looks like also our young boys need to be educated.
Oh yes, we also need to save the boy child, because all the time the boy child gets misplaced. He's not getting any guidance from anyone. So that's why there are pregnancies. Remember, the girls cannot impregnate themselves. So we need to bring them forth together. Understand when as a boy, this is your role. When as a girl, this is your role. Those are the things that we need to sit together as parents and all the stakeholders. Where can we draw the line? This thing, the government came and ruled the house. I also blame part of that, because there's no government before the family. Remember, God, the family first, then the government after. So if things are going to go this way for long, without family being put together, even responsible for what they must be responsible for towards their kids, we are going to have a doomed nation. Let us avoid that. Stop the blame game. Really say everybody on board. The government must assist where the plans and the programs are being proposed. Because most of them, they are not on the ground. We as parents, we are there. We see the problems. Some of the problems we cannot put much emphasis because of every parent has to guide the child.
I'd like to bring in, pardon me there, I'd like to bring in Tate Matakanye. I see that he's back now. Tate Matakanye, one of the things that some have criticized is the sex education in schools. Some parents say that this is the reason why some of their children are becoming more curious at an early age, while others are saying you are teaching them and arming them with information at an early age. What do you make then of these arguments, and which one are you leaning towards?
Now, probably one we should take it within the context. I think we are talking within the context of 2020-2021. Now, I don't think that argument holds. 2021, as I said earlier on, that the idle mind is the devil's workshop. Is that this pandemic nearly destroyed the system of education in school. So these children are not doing anything anymore. So there are no more sports at school because the pandemic is really taking its toll. The system, the education, they don't go to school, I don't think it's a question of sex education. It is within 2020 and 2021. And if that was the case, we would not be talking about 23,000, specifically in Gauteng, from 2020-2020. There's a reason why the number of pregnant teenage has risen. So I characterize it within that context to say it is the fact that there's no more consistency in the terms of education. Nothing keeps them busy anymore. As much as we teach, I think parents do teach, do talk to, and as much as we encourage parents to go closer to their children and teach them and talk to them and guide them and support them. I think this is what we are always saying. But I don't think it holds water, the question of saying, no, there is no sex. I mean, it therefore means for all these years, there has been no sex education. But I'm talking of this particular context to say these numbers that you are talking about is only from 2020, 2021. So there is a reason that I've already stipulated, that there is a reason why we are talking about this.
And should we be calling them teenage pregnancies? Because